And then what's fascinating with AI is that you when you study the theory, gradient descent and like it's all nice, very well formalized. And then first thing people do, like practitioners do, is they train a model in that way, then they remove the last layer, then they replace it, then they fine tune, and you're completely outside of theory. Like the fact that it works is like it's just completely empirical.
Yes,
Always, so
yes,
it's kind of what we're saying. So you're taking those things, they've been trained separately,
yeah,
like in many iterations or different sets of models, and then you combine them together and you make it work basically. But yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes. Kind of like if you think about evolution and genetics, so it's like humans have like a kind of shared design, but then we kind of all evolve in our own way, and that's also why for me it's difficult to imagine this like thesis of like one blockchain is gonna eat them all or one AI model is gonna eat them all. Like we always have that fantasy because we are actually, and I think you are very well placed to know that we are biased by social networks. Because social networks have that very weird specificity, which is once you have a network effect between
About our current financial system. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of New Forum, a research network dedicated to open learning in the arts and sciences, pioneering a new culture for internet design. And as usual, I'm joined by Sofiane Delloue, the driving force behind Newfoundation, Newcoin, and NEWFORUM. Sofiane is a systems thinker behind major breakthroughs in AI over the past decade. I'm also quite thrilled to welcome Mathieu Baudet, founder and CEO of Linera, the first blockchain designed for elastic scalability through microchains. Previously a researcher and engineer at Meta's Libra Novi project, Mathieu specializes in BFT, consensus, cryptographic security, and AI-driven infrastructure, shaping the next generation of decentralized systems. Mathieu, Sofiane, welcome to the show. Let's dive right in if you're ready.
hello, hello,
yes.
good to be here.
Awesome. So, Matthew, my first question goes to you. The first time we spoke, you said something that really stuck with me. You mentioned that we need to save AI from itself, and it's been almost a year with DAI gaining momentum. Do you still see this as a pressing concern? What new risks or opportunities have surfaced since then?
Okay, yeah, no. So the reason I was saying that is I mean people have noticed that a blockchain is this the blockchain is bringing the technology to create decentralized systems and but then AI is kind of doing the opposite. This is like creating technology that tends to centralize, giving giving more power to the owner of the AI training pipelines, essentially, that require lots of data in the first place, so that your models are good, and then and then lots of compute to create the models. And so lots of investments essentially. And access to the data. And so the concern by lots of people is that you will end up having a few models that are really good, not leaving a lot of space for competition, and they would be controlled by a few. So that's the fear. We are seeing on the positive side, we're seeing lots of some efforts to create high quality open source models. So they are still created by big entities, but they are made available there to the world for to we but the problem is we don't have transparency on how they're created. So yeah, so there's a very interesting line of work where people are trying to create those AI models directly in the decentralized way. So having the community contribute to the compute and to the data. It's super challenging. It's also super exciting. Um, and yeah, so the hope also is that when you if you create the right protocols, then you will access to more data because people will be able to maybe fine-tune some of the parts of the model using data that they would otherwise not share, creating better models. So that's the theory. At this point, I can't say it's where people are in their roadmap, but it's definitely super interesting.
Sofiane, any thoughts?
Yeah, so in terms of the new opportunities and the new challenges, it seems that now you have this struggle between centralized and decentralized that is incentivizing, that is intensifying. And it's quite interesting to see what happened since Project Stargate and R1. It feels like we have moved to a new paradigm for AI. I think today you have about 1% of the AI talent. So if we take all the research, the academics, and so on, about 1% of that's living in the centralized tech giant part of AI. And the other 99% are distributed across the world, working on their little things. And the only thing they have to coordinate currently is Hugging Face and GitHub, basically. So they can coordinate around code, around data sets. And I believe what's the next level of that is plugging all the AI models through basically inference or training or like all those different layers to do exactly what Mathieu just mentioned, which is some level of open learning, like learning from what other models are doing. And for that, we need trust, we need cryptographic rails. And so I think the use case for Web3 here is like so obvious. So for me, the big opportunity here is we've been all working on Web3 for quite a while now. And let's be honest, we haven't seen so much adoption beyond the casino type of behavior. Most of the habits have been formed on existing platforms. So like the reason why Elon Musk bought Twitter, you have 44 billion, you are one of the best founders in the world, and you still decide to buy a company. That tells a lot about how hard it is to take people outside of their sunk cost on social platforms and so on. And I think what is happening now is at very fast pace, we are entering a time where the internet is being reshuffled. And through that reshuffling, we have an opportunity to basically integrate Web3 into that transformation. That's for me the big opportunity that's arising.
And the regulations obviously are getting better, so that's helping a lot in this vision.
Sofiane, so this concept you just talked about, does it like strengthen or weaken the case of decentralized AI, like with the emerging models like R1?
If the idea of decentralization is to increase performance through the sharing of signals between models, any improvement in open source is a plus. Any improvement in the open source is an accelerator of that. And actually, I'm curious with Linera, how does an AI model benefit from the microchains that you guys have designed? What kind of like ideal use case? How can we connect humans and AI models? What are the different options that are made available?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. So with Linera, so we working on AI in different ways. So and I would say the common pattern is first creating a really big engine for Web3 computation, for decentralized computation. And that's able to support lots of workflows from users in parallel, and still guarantee real-time experience for everybody. And so now, and then in the course of doing that, we also extended the capabilities of traditional blockchain transactions by allowing our applications to be connected with the world, to be querying other systems, possibly centralized, and also to be easily queried by also other systems such as AI agents. So globally, what we're seeing is that with our engine, it's easier for AI agents to call into us than other systems. We will give them their own microchain, for instance. So we're creating this abstraction of a trusted execution state that's local and that they can query and then they can mutate. It looks like through this microchain abstraction, it looks for us a little bit like a traditional service, a Web2 service. So it's much easier for the AI agents to discover the API and use them. So they ask the system, okay, what can I do with my microchain? We give you back in Web2 standard GraphQL. We give you back the APIs essentially with the documentation. The AI agent can look into that and then can figure out, okay, that's how I do a transfer. I understand. And then if they are planning to do a transfer now, they would know how to do it. So we're facilitating the connection with AI agents. And now, but those AI agents, I'm talking about existing ones that may run locally on a computer in off chain, right? But then also there's this new trend to create autonomous AI agents that run on chain, which is kind of fascinating. And because of course those AI agents, they can have a coin, they can, I mean, they can do a lot of stuff, and they can have a community. So it's kind of fascinating. So now if you want to do that and you want the AI agent to be really respected for what it is, for being a transparent, autonomous on-chain being, it's obviously very challenging to do right now on a traditional blockchain. The brain of the agent is this big model that you cannot just publish on a L1 blockchain, right? But with Linera, what you could do is you can program the entire kind of the system, the skeleton of the agent, and then when you need to make some queries to the big model, you do that directly through to a different partner that's running a decentralized inference system, and that we can also help coordinate. So you can query uh, different providers and maybe compare nodes. So this is where like being able to do these transactions from within the Linera blockchain comes very handy. So that's one of the things we do, and the second thing we're doing for AI, um, and then in general, with the bigger engine, you can coordinate more complex workflows. Um, so we're not working with people doing training just now, but we're working with deep-in companies, so managing fleets of devices and data streams from their devices. And it's the same idea that each device has a microchain. They can talk to it, and then the microchain can then stream the data coming from the device to other microchains. So you can even imagine like some kind of map reduce or sort of some kind of distributed organization between the device and the coordinators, the coordinator chain, if you want, right? All within Linera, and then this geometry allows scaling horizontally and maintaining a level of service disregarding the amount of computation or the workload. Mhm.
And so here the benefit of microchains is, I suppose, scalability. How does it compare with centralized counterparts? So let's say you talk about orchestration. So I assume it would be possible to imagine things like, let's say, an immutable version of Nathan or this kind of like workflow marketplaces. So you create your recipe. Let's say you create like your, step one, step two, this agent does this agent does that. And then you put it on Linera. Is it a good use case? And what's the kind of like latency you get compared to doing it on a centralized server.
So the main scalability is definitely one of the benefits of using Linera, but it's what we care about is not just the transactions per second. It's really also the latency and being able to guarantee this quality of service. And then there's the connectivity aspect of it that I was trying to describe. So we see Linera as a hyper connected system that can easily talk to other chains, easily talk to services, and also be easily integrated in other systems uh, like AI agents. So now in your examples, you're asking about like what happens if you have several agents that are talking to each other inside Linera. That would
Yeah, let's say you
certainly
wanna run a workflow, so you have like, I don't know, 20 different tools. Each one has their own agent. So I don't know if you are familiar with MCP, for example, from Claude. It's like this protocol where you can
right.
query tools and inject data into a context window, so you can basically enrich the LLM with like additional
Mhm.
stuff. If we were to deploy those MCPs on Linera, would that work? And is it a good use case?
That's interesting. So I haven't looked specifically into MCPs, but definitely our vision is that once you have an entity that's running on a microchain, you can talk to the other systems of inside running inside Linera, and like very easily. It's we have this massively scalable low latency messaging system between the microchains. In fact, we have more than that. We also have the ability to share data. We are also in the ability to subscribe to other agents. So that's something that makes Linera also very good for decentralized social networks, where I would use as a user or as an agent, I use my microchain to post update. So my news feed would be essentially hosted in my microchain, but then I can also have followers, and they would be able to be notified and read my news feed
Mhm.
from the other chains.
And I assume having those kind of webhook type interactions, you can also create like messaging and things like that, which are also very handy when it comes to like talking to models, talking to agents, and stuff like that.
Yeah, so Linera embeds. So the origin of Linera, by the way, was a research project at Facebook that was a payment system, a low latency decentralized payment system. And so you get inside Linera, you get through the messaging that I was mentioning, you get a payment system, a highly scalable payment system, basically for free, and also a messaging system. Now, depending on the applications, for messaging, so yeah, for coordinating agent, I think that's perfect. I was gonna say when you say messaging, people may if for humans, you would want to add a layer of privacy on top of that, um, and then there is a discussion whether you want that to be on chain or not. But yeah, for I think in your context, in your original question, I think that would make a lot of sense for agents to talk to each other, because agents are those transparently executed beings. I mean, the on-chain agents, and so you would definitely want them to talk through on-chain. Mhm.
Yeah, to be as transparent as possible and to be able to rewind and understand what happened, like to kind of the explainability basically of all the steps of the agents. I think this is very valuable
Right.
also for
And
researchers.
one of the things that people are concerned about autonomous AI agents is is also the volume of the data and the volume of the traffic that agents may just start like generating. And so that's why also you need a pretty big engine for this.
And who runs the microchain? Like, is it on the client side? Is it as a user? Do I run my microchain? Or is it like you rent a space that's run by a decentralized network?
Yeah, so the way we make microchains very cheap and easy to create is by separating the validation from the block production. So you if you are a end user, or like you can so the by default we like that you create your own blocks. And now if you want to be this on-chain being, so either you have a sort of caretaker that is creating the blocks for you. It's still going to be very transparent, and creating blocks can be made very automatic. You just see the message arrive, and you respond and you just create a block that contains the answer to the message essentially. But you um, and then there's a roadmap where we would potentially, if you don't want to do this work to be online and creating blocks for your microchains, you can so we can either use the validators of Linera, but that's something we right now we prefer to avoid, because we that's creating more work, and then it's possibly not as scalable, or not as cost efficient. But you could, what I'm imagining is that there would be third parties. So you'd just ask a partner to act as a block producer in your microchains for you. And we already have some partners that are interested in that vision, especially in AI. So creating a marketplace for block producers, essentially.
Matthew, so can we say that microchains can serve as the trust layer for AI generated intelligence?
Well, we'd love that for sure. We are going to work more and more with partners on this front. But we do have already two projects looking at using AI. So mostly AI inference, or coordinating AI inference systems in Linera right now.
Cool. And does Linera support the decentralized identifiers? I'm just asking for myself. I'm just taking advantage of this conversation.
I see. We can work on it. Yeah.
Cool. That would be great. Yeah, because we believe, so this is like the Newcoin vision, that the future is agent-centric, meaning you have, and so what I mean by agent-centric, actually, it was before the craze around agents. Is this idea that you can always decide where you want to store the state and where you want to have the kind of rights management. Rights can be decided at the server level, which is Web 2. Rights can be decided at the contract level, which is kind of distributed, but you kind of rent a space on an existing decentralized network. So you kind of abstract decentralization, and then people come and they can rent a hotel room at your hotel. Like we could say Ethereum is a hotel, and cryptographic keys are like the key of your room, and you can go in and out, and you are independent. But at the end of the day, it's still a network. And then you have the next level, which is you have actually your own machine and you control your stuff, and you are like, and so for this world to exist, and I think it's a combination of all of that, they all work nicely together. Centralized, decentralized, like abstracted and decentralized, physically decentralized. Those things are going to need a data primitive, like a data construct that's going to tie it all together. And it looks like the DID is the best candidate. The concept behind DIDs is you create a unique identifier that has a resolver on each blockchain. So currently there are 120 blockchains that use that standard. And then you can sign data events with, again, it's another W3C standard, which is verifiable claims. Now it's called verifiable credential. It's mostly used for identity protocols, but I believe it could and should be used also for any form of data event. And then when you have that, you can have eventual consistency, you can have interoperability between all systems. Cryptographic signatures can be read by smart contracts, and so you can go from like a blockchain to off-chain to then back on-chain and still keep the trust. The only thing you don't have is like solving the double spend problem and stuff like that. But when it comes to verifiability of data, this comes very handy. So yeah, I'm very interested in how we can join Linera through that, like maximize interoperability. Because I believe
Interesting.
eventually, blockchains are going not to compete on network effects. Like that's the first generation of blockchain wars. It was like who has the most developers, who has the programming
Mm.
language that everyone has a sunk cost in, and then you cannot like blah blah blah. Like that's the first generation. I think the second generation is going to be who is the most compatible with others. And if you are the most compatible with others and everyone is fighting to be compatible, then it becomes like, who gives me the best privacy, immutability, scalability, like all those things that are supposed to be trilemmas, and everyone is going to try to optimize. And that's where I think the real competition is going to happen, similar to, when you look at the web, who gives you the fastest what you need? It's like who is the fastest at giving you what you need? Or operators, if you buy an ISP and they have a $20 a month like subscription, but internet like is always like kind of shaky and sometimes it doesn't work and so on. People end up converging on the internet providers that have the highest, speed and like all those like criteria. And I think that, yeah, once we move into that world, I think players like Linera have a great shot at taking a lot of market shares if you can, grant those benefits. So it's less about forming a moat around developers and so on, and it's more about now everything is compatible. You can use whatever you want. You can easily switch which blockchain you want to use as like your privacy provider or your immutability provider. And yeah, and I think that's where the game for Linera can become quite interesting.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I was definitely observing that with chain abstraction, which is maybe the concept that you're describing, where everything is abstracted away, and the ID users are not. People are saying our user experience is so good that users don't even know they're using a blockchain.
Yeah.
And but then when people say that, I've always thought, well, in that case, they also don't know if they're using your blockchain or another one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So 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 I've always been fascinated by people not realizing that. But yeah, I know, and it's I think this we started like the project with relatively ambitious plan on scaling and very open-minded on the rest. So we started with the Rust wasm VM. Now we're looking into supporting the EVM. We're looking into be cryptographically compatible with a number of formats. And we're looking, obviously, like as I mentioned, to be hyper-connected, so having a number of native bridges with other systems. Um, we're about to announce a partnership, a pretty big one with Layer 1, where we're gonna have our first native bridge. We're gonna integrate with their data layer.
Mhm.
Um, and and all of that essentially is, I think, is already in what you're saying. Is like we're specialized in low latency, high scalability workloads. We're not necessarily like the other chains may be preferred for the settlement layer and the storage of assets, storage of value, as people say.
Mhm.
But that's okay. Like you can have a hybrid. The concept we're exploring actually with this partner is the concept of hybrid application down the road. So you could have your code in another blockchain, and then you need to do a very fast interaction. You need to span something to download data, and then make some computation on those data and come back with a certificate. That's typically what you would be able to do in our system. That's very hard to do otherwise. I mean, otherwise you would be essentially its own project. So you'd have to fundraise and create a network of validators just to do this layer of validation. In our case, we're saying, no, why don't you just code inside Linera, and just we download the data for you. We can do that. We have this ability to run this kind of long-running computations or long-running workflows inside the Linera transaction. The reason we are the only ones able to do that is because we're super parallel, and we want users to compute in their own chains. So now, if in my own chain, if I send a transaction that has a lot of things to do, like downloading stuff, and that's going to block my blockchain, my macro chain. It's going to be waiting, executing on a transaction, right? But But that's fine. The other users of the system, they don't care. They have their own chain. But now look into a traditional blockchain where you have only a single chain of blocks. They will never let you put a transaction in there that takes even just like a few seconds to execute, because that's going to ruin the block space, essentially the latency for everybody else in the system. So they cannot let you that. So basically, if you have these long running queries or long running computation right now, you would have to find an Oracle provider. You would have to work with them, and yeah, and so in Linera you can just code an application, just directly code your workflow.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the breakthrough from DeepSeek R1. So one of the things that they have done is instead of running that kind of chain of thought where you have to wait until all the steps have been generated by the model, they kind of run them in parallel. And then they have another model that looks at like which one is the best of those outputs, and then it selects that output and so on. And they are able to gain so much. So I see so many parallels between the way AI is evolving. So AI is moving from big models to systems, which have different like components that are modular, and blockchains as well. Like we are moving from like, let's create a blockchain and then keep it like exactly the same, like having this pure one design for all the operations, to kind of starting to break it down into different modules and, like the data layer, as you said, the execution layer, the settlement layer, like the AI systems are taking the same path. You have now like a form of sharding in the form of mixture of experts, so you have like 8 experts inside a big
Oh,
model,
okay.
and then you kind of gate, you say, oh, based on the prompt, you're gonna send that prompt to like a sub model or something. And yeah, and then you have systems like O1 and so on. They are not bigger models. Like it's actually, I saw there was a talk from this guy from Stanford who was saying like, you have to stop calling it models. They are not models anymore. They are systems. They are like using like many many
Okay. I
layers.
see, I see.
And when OpenAI, like he calls Sam Altman out saying like when he calls it a model, is this deceiving people. Those things are not models. They are made of many, many, he calls it compound
All right.
systems. And yeah, I think
And
modularity
you,
is definitely,
mm, And then what's fascinating with AI is that you when you study the theory, gradient descent, and like it's all nice, very well formalized. And then first thing people do, like practitioners do, is they train a model in that way, then they remove the last layer, then they replace it, then they fine tune, and you're completely outside of theory. Like the fact that it works is like it's just completely empirical.
yes,
Always, so
yes,
it's kind of what we're saying. So you're taking those things, they've been trained separately,
yeah,
like in many iterations or different sets of models, and then you combine them together and you make it work basically. But yeah,
yes,
I
yes.
find it
It
fascinating.
kind of,
You were,
okay, no, I was just going to say, it's kind of like if you think about evolution and genetics, so it's like humans have like a kind of shared design, but then we kind of all evolve in our own way. And that's also why for me it's difficult to imagine this like thesis of like one blockchain is going to eat them all or one AI model is going to eat them all. Like we always have that fantasy because we are actually, and I think you are very well placed to know that we are biased by social networks, because social networks have that very weird specificity, which is once you have a network effect between humans, it's definitely hard to leave that. It's like very difficult to escape network effects. And so that's the kind of businesses where, yes, you do have a winner take all. But if you take like, for example, internet browsers, it used to be Netscape, then it was Internet Explorer, Mozilla, then it became Chrome. Like Internet Explorers are a great example of how you don't necessarily need a winner takes all, and you don't necessarily have like an hegemonic system that's going to always be the best. And I think with AI and blockchain, it's going to be even more diverse because you have different needs and you have different situations where you need, like what you said earlier about some people might prefer to do their investment, like putting $10 million investment into something using USDT on Ethereum, because somehow they believe, the Ethereum blockchain is the safest because it has been running for a long time and it's highly decentralized. And other people will say, oh, if I want to send like a DM, I'm going to use Linera. And if I want to like run my DAO, maybe Solana is the best or whatever. Like people will have like different perceptions of models. And I think it's kind of the same with when you go to OpenAI. Even OpenAI itself, when you go to ChatGPT, you have that list of models and you say, oh, I'm going to use O1 because now I want something that's about reasoning. But now I need to search the web, so I'm going to use GPT-4o. And I want to code, so I'm going to go to Claude. And we kind of start to, act like as if those things were like people with different capabilities. And it also reminds me of that line of thought around what if all those systems were agents, like a smart contract, a blockchain, a social network, all those things are in fact agents. And we relate to them in the same way we would say a blockchain is someone who's putting a lot of computation to ensure immutability, trust, and so on. That kind of value proposition exists in the real world. It's called bailiffs, accountants, tax advisors. Like those people, you don't want them to be unpredictable. You want them to be extremely predictable because that's how we cement society. Like we need that level of like trust, which costs a lot because it takes time to build trust. You have to go through a whole process. You have to build institutions and so on. And I think blockchains are that. Like blockchains, they are kind of your accountant. Like they are like you want it to be reinforcing a state and making sure that the state is truthful and so on. While AI is more the artist or the kind of inventor who's going to do completely unpredictable stuff every day. And yeah, like they both spend a lot of money in computation, but they do it for different reasons.
Well, we are very green. We don't do proof of work anymore. At least most of us.
That's true.
So
That's true.
what should we be worried about DeepSeek? Do you some people are aware, I don't know, some people were doubting how it was trained, whether that was actually cheap as they claimed.
Well, so definitely there are many pieces to the puzzle, but definitely they did some optimization. So for example, like they have skipped the CUDA layer on the GPU, so they went like deeper in the stack to optimize. They have done a lot of code optimization. I think that people in the Silicon Valley did not feel like doing because they have so much cash. That's not their biggest problem. When it comes to training, for sure, they have used much more than like the 5 mil. But again, lots of breakthrough as well in terms of. I think it's kind of when you don't have enough money, you have to figure out ways to make it cheaper. But this being said, I think it's a great opportunity for the world to have that major step in open source AI. So like that's the part where I'm very happy and grateful that they open sourced the whole thing and shared it with the world.
So with like everything you said and where like all of this is headed, future of AI systems, do we no longer need human intervention, or will human oversight remain essential?
I think right now they are closely watched by a team. So that creates actually this interesting concept of a model that would be transparent but not completely autonomous, in the sense that humans would still have a kill switch, for instance. That I think actually works very well on Linera. Actually, I was thinking because the humans, I mean, technically speaking, the model would be on chain, but the humans are still managing the service that creates the block, so they can stop creating blocks if they feel like the model needs to take a break.
Yeah, I think that's going to take a lot of time, if ever, the machines replace humans at productive tasks, because we have so many challenges ahead. So if you look at, when we solved we solved farming. So before, like 99% of people were working all day in a farm. And then the machines arrived, and then we all went to live in cities. But we created new problems that only us could solve. And then we built factories and so on. And then we created new problems that we had to solve. And it's an ever expanding, situation where, yes, we might be able to not need customer support. We might no longer need to do, sales, marketing, and accounting and things like that. But then we will have like so much more ambitions to do things like, clean energy or whatever it means, better energy, more efficient energy. Like it's an open-ended question. Like how can we produce more energy with least resource? How can we travel the space? How can we live longer? Like we are going to create so many new problems for ourselves that I think humans are going to just like use AI to tackle those problems, and they're going to be much harder than the ones we have been trying to solve until now. That's why I think like this idea that startups are saturated and it's too hard to launch a startup. It's just because we kind of look at the state of the web and we are drawn into the way it is now, but we are not looking at all the things that we have not even thought that could be possible. And now you open like trillions of possible startup ideas that don't exist. It's really about
Oh well, there's this theory that the one man startup or the one man unicorn is gonna be a
yes,
fact soon.
yes,
I don't know if I
yes.
buy it. That sounds fascinating. When WhatsApp was acquired by Facebook, it was one of the biggest acquisition for a team that was, I think, just 20 people or something like that, like just tens of people. So
Hmm.
you could compute the valuation per capita. That was pretty insane. Uh,
Mm.
and then it turned out to be also a very good deal at the end of the day for Facebook. It was a very
Yeah,
good acquisition.
yeah.
So yeah, so the one man next time they're gonna acquire a unicorn that's not only one person plus AI.
Yeah, I think what's quite exciting is like the speed at which we can rebuild the web. So what I said at the very start, that to me the big opportunity is it took us 30 years to build the web as we know it. How fast can we triple that size in terms of the amount of content, the amount of apps, and so on? And what does it mean for the incumbents? And I think that there is so much creative energy that's going to be deployed into escaping the existing modes that I think at some point we will break them. And I think it started to happen in many areas, like modes that we thought were supposed to be there forever. Like if you look at the media, for example, the media dinosaurs, like they were there and it was kind of impossible to create news that would, be outcompeting them. And then you look at like the audience of CNN versus Joe Rogan, and you're like, wow. Like that, like I think the last election was definitely driven by podcasters much more than by institutional media. And that's just the beginning, I think. Like the the constraints and the limitations are the boundaries are starting to crack. And now you will see, I think, same in tech. I think a lot of technologies are going to emerge, and that's great for Web3, I think.
So, any closing thoughts from both of you? Maybe something that we didn't touch on that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'm very curious actually, Mathieu, for you, what's your take on the current state of crypto? Like, I think we are in a very bizarre moment where,
Yeah.
meme coins are like going crazy, but also crazy down, and everyone burned their hands. And then you have now Bitcoin is being kind of institutionalized and becoming part of like big banks and so on. And then you have all those protocols that are struggling to actually gain traction, even though they have raised so much money and so on. So, what's your,
Well,
yeah,
yeah. So first, we're not done yet for sure. Like we are not seeing crypto everywhere used by everybody in an application that is massively adopted. It still looks like very much like you were saying the casino. Yes, for meme coins. Um, m- some so you got applications like games that are like mostly like casino games. You have and then you have the trading. So there's product market fit for on-chain trading, so exchanges. And you got professionals that are definitely using crypto all day long, doing their arbitrage. The Now it's not mass adoption. It's just like professionals. Um, yeah, I don't know whether I think there's a growth. There's a lot of growth potential with the AI, as we talked during what I just mentioned. But I think what people are also very excited about is the progress in the US regulations that are going to make it much easier for institutions to use crypto for what it is, which is like a really good technology for transferring assets and programming assets. And then, so now is this going to mean that everybody does crypto? I don't know, but if the financial system start to integrate crypto, I personally I believe it's going to be much more than Bitcoin and a few stable coins. It's going to be potentially that could really just change the rails of the financial system. And so the sizes, when you look at the sizes of the traditional finance, it's nothing. It's like orders of magnitude more assets than the crypto alone. So there's a massive potential here to make the financial systems more efficient, more programmable, more transparent, more open. And that yeah, so and that could very well happen, like because regulations were essentially freezing everything. And now that it's gonna be, that seems like we're gonna have like much better regulations soon in the US.
Yeah, in the US,
I
because
am
in Europe, it's we are at the beginning of a new paradigm that's going to be like kind of
well,
very
I don't know. I mean, I think Europe can imitate the US probably if they see that it works. And then, but when it comes to finance, if it happens in the US, that's already pretty big.
yeah.
And not only finance, but also, I mean, not the US, but also Asia would be in the game. Um, so I can see, and yeah, and so US regulations. One of the ingredient I'm thinking that's going to make that possible. So is privacy, on-chain privacy has been challenging precisely because of regulations. Um, and no, basically everybody's kind of scared. Like, so you got a few projects that are going to go that are doing it kind of the pirate way. Um, uh, so they're like trying to be compliant or not trying, but definitely hoping that that they'll stay out of trouble. But that um, same thing that was kind of frozen. If we have better regulations, we could have actual privacy and in particular actual and actual compliance. And that's I think what's been scaring institutions. So yeah, so um, I see a lot of potential and then of course we with the kind of tech that we're developing in era, we'd love also to see consumer apps like maybe a decentralized social network with a clever incentives uh, and, uh, and 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 a financial component that people like um, or something else.
I think the current state is a lot of the people who could have built decent business were discouraged to do it, especially in the US. And so it was the open gate for this meme coin frenzy. Then I think one of the symptoms or one of the reasons why, like, meme coins are also a symptom of another problem, which is I think there has been a lot of um, strategies around funding projects that are mainly designed to be infrastructure narratives that were designed to attract retail investors, kind of the next Ethereum. Like you missed on Ethereum, you missed on Solana. And so people started to pour a lot of money into infrastructure, and now there is this kind of infrastructure overload where we don't have enough like consumer products because they have been discouraged to build because of the lack of funding and the risky. So it's like everyone is selling picks and shovels, but at the end, nobody is actually even digging gold. And I think this is the part where I completely agree with you, like having one, and it doesn't need to be like millions of apps. You have a lot of layer ones that have like 1,000 app builders, but they never really like develop the full thing. I mean, 3, 4 very successful apps on the layer one would be, I think, a massive success in the coming 6 months.
Yeah, amazing. I almost feel like Matthew was defining newOS at some point with the few.
Yeah, let's definitely see how we can integrate with newOS on
Definitely.
Linera. Just very briefly to show you an update on where we are at with newOS. So basically, this is the explore page where you can find like all sorts of agents, data providers, AI models, and so on.
Okay.
And then you pick like one that you like. So for example, if you want the QN 2.5, you click chat.
Okay.
It starts what we call a space. And then the twist is that once you are inside a space, you have the contributors on the right. So it's like me plus a model. And you can start inviting like all sorts of humans and machines and AI agents and so on. And everyone is kind of sharing the context window. And so that creates some very interesting stuff where you have, multiple models from different kinds on the same context window that can take part in this like group chat.
Okay.
And then you vote for the things that you like the most. So let's say if I like a certain quote of something that someone said, and then you have a leaderboard, and then each thought, each little bit of information is ranked. And yeah, and then you have your last ongoing like spaces. You can create a new one and start inviting people. And then you have the what's, which is the points, like it's your reputation. It's like your PhD. So the more positive evaluations you get from other members in the network, the more you accrue that reputation score, and that gives you access to more rewards, more influence on the network, and things like that. And yeah, so all of that is still like primarily off chain. The watts are on base, but we are still trying to figure out what's the best infrastructure to decentralize it more. Right now, it's like we
Yeah.
use DIDs for every data event. You can download all your data if you want, but it's not the kind of like high velocity application. So yeah, we have about
Okay.
40,000
Interesting.
humans and about 50,000 agents, like AI agents that are like mixing
Okay.
between tools and AI models and vector embeddings, like RAGs, basically. So you can create your RAG in a few clicks and then choose like which model. We also have like agents that are doing TikTok-like content. So for example, Adam is like releasing videos where he's like talking about he's giving courses basically, and so he's an AI agent.
No, that's cool.
And then you can vote and you can say, oh, I like this one and I like this one a little bit less, little bit more. And that creates basically a reinforcement learning feedback loop that can then be used by all the other AI models to improve their models based on,
Okay.
that
That's
history
fun.
of what's good, what's bad,
Nice,
and so on.
nice.
So yeah, thank you so much, Matthew, for your time with us. Thank you, Sofiane, also for the insights. So yeah, Matthew, where can our listeners find you on your social platforms? And if you have any last words you can share with us.
Yeah, no, well, thanks so much for the discussion. I had a great time. You can find more about Linera on our website, linera.io, on Twitter, and then join our community on Discord and Telegram.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And Sofiane, where can we find you?
Awesome. Sofiane and CEO on Twitter.
Amazing. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.